Speak of pending bills in counties, and the National Treasury is at the center of this blame game, even as they delay the release of capitation funds. Aside from that, we'll also be taking a look at the Standard newspaper, where the death or the inquest into the death of former Minister of Lugari constituency, Cyrus Jirongo, continues. Even as, you know, it has been about a month since he passed away. And the Speaker of the National Assembly is a man as well whose name has been fronted on the pages. We'll be taking a look at that and why that is the case. That will be later on the newspaper review. My name is Cynthia Nanjala. I'd love to get this show started. We begin from the capital of Nairobi, where running battles broke out on Tuesday between residents of Mukuru Kwanjenga and police following the demolition of structures to pave way for the expansion of Catherine Dereba Road in Nairobi. Tension escalated after police moved in to secure the area as the residents protested this exercise, accusing authorities of failing to follow due process. The demolitions, which began in the early hours of Tuesday morning, disrupted normal activities as angry residents confronted law enforcement officers. Nairobi Governor Johnson Sakaja arrived at the scene to assess the situation, but found himself at the center of the unrest as clashes intensified shortly after his visit. The governor ordered an immediate suspension of the demolition exercise in an effort to calm tensions and allow for further consultations.
Today we have stopped this demolition. These vehicles are going out. It will not happen. Any action that will be taken here must be signed off with the people, because ultimately we can't tell the people to remain. And we do our ethic, you know. I mean, what is so hard? At Nairobians, less than the people of Mombasa. These people, I mean, they have gone through so much. The stress, the strain, the distress. Yeah? But what waheshimiwe?
Umelala kama huyo mama pale chini hapa tu about 100 mita 200. Yeye usubuhi anaamka anapata tu anaona roof yake inatoka imeenda na inachukua na tingatinga. Huko kwa kitanda unaangalia juu unaona mawingu. That's very unfair. That is very unfair. Hawa wananchi waje wazungumze na wao, tuangalie kama ni road extension.
Anxiety has gripped residents of Karai village in Kikuyu constituency, Kiambu County, after purported human remains were discovered at Karai grounds. The remains, believed to be human bones, were found in a location surrounded by water ponds and natural water resources, commonly used by local residents and people from neighboring areas. The discovery has heightened fears among the community, with residents questioning the safety of accessing the grounds and nearby water points. Police officers who arrived at the scene secured the area and collected the remains, which have since been taken to a government laboratory for further forensic analysis to establish their origin and their identity.
The purported human skeleton must have been buried in the mud not for the less than 2 years ago. I mean, analysis have indicated that those bones have been there for more than 2 years. They have taken the samples and they are now moving with them to the laboratory and conduct a further analysis. The intention of conducting further analysis is to establish the gender, specifically the gender of the person, assuming that it was a person, the apparent cause of his death, and eventually give us a feedback on the way forward.
Sasa mimi nikuja kaniauliza hii kichwa ni ya mtu ni ya mnyama, nikamwambia ni ya mtu. Sasa toka hapo nikampigia mtu ya nyumba 10 akaja tukaconfirm, tukampigia assistant chief akaja akaconfirm.
Visa za watu kujirusha kwa mademu watu kadhaa, lakini hatujapata kesi kisha kama hii ya mtu amekutwa mahali amepatikana amekaa siku mingi akiwa amekufa. Hii ni mara ya kwanza, lakini watu wengi wamekuwa wakipatikana wamekufa kwa demu, lakini wengi wanakuwa wa kujirusha.
Not for the rest than
The Ramogi Professional Caucus has called for unity within the Orange Democratic Movement ODM party, emphasizing that internal divisions are undermining the political influence of the Luo community ahead of the 2027 general elections. Speaking in Nairobi, caucus leaders highlighted that ongoing factional feuds within ODM have slowed development initiatives in the larger Luo Nyanza region. They stressed that a united party would strengthen the community's bargaining power and enhance its ability to influence national politics. The leaders also appealed to President William Ruto to expedite the implementation of development projects across the country, noting that faster action would benefit communities nationwide and foster trust in government initiatives.
Point number 4, under political stability. And we have said within the ODM party, remember, as we are professionals, some of us here are members of the party, some of us here are members, as I've said in the political stability point, some of us here are members of ODM party, others are members of UDA, others are members of other parties. But we believe collectively that within the ODM party, and I've said we encourage unity, discipline, and strategic coherence in order to strengthen its position for negotiation. That is something that we encourage. But because we also live in a democracy, we believe that those issues will be sorted in due course within party structures. So we don't want to go into the details of how that will happen, but our advice is that as united party, strengthened party, a consolidated party, stands a chance to negotiate with any other like-minded in a manner that they see fit only when they are united and stronger together.
Ni bayana kwamba ni msimu wa siasa na kila mwanasiasa anataka kujivutia upande wake. Lakini tukumbuke ya kwamba wakati huu wa siasa ni vyema kila Mkenya ajue kuna zile agenda 10 muhimu ambazo zilitiwa sahihi kati ya chama cha ODM na chama cha UDA. Endapo kuna yeyote ambaye ana nia ya kuvuruga uhusiano bali lakini endapo kuna yeyote ambaye anataka kuvuruga zile 10 point agenda ambazo ziliwekwa sahihi kati ya ODM na UDA, haitakuwa vyema sana kwa Wakenya kwa jumla, kwa sababu kila Mkenya anataka kuona kwamba wale ambao waliathirika wakati wa ghasia za baada za uchaguzi, wale ambao kwa bahati mbaya walikufa wamefidiwa, kila agenda inafaa itimizwe. Na yeyote ambaye ana lengo ya kuhakikisha kwamba zile agenda zijatimia, haitakuwa vyema kwa Mkenya yote. Kwa hivyo tunahimiza kila aliyetia sahihi katika makubaliano hayo ni kwamba waangazie na wazingatie umoja na uwiano ya Kenya nzima kabla ya kuweka mbele matakwa yao ya kibinafsi.
Kamati inayosimamia utekelezaji wa hiyo 10 point agenda iweze kuangalia vile ambavyo hiyo shughuli inaendelea na iweze pia kufahamisha Wakenya mahali ambapo wamefika na hili jambo, kwa sababu ni jambo ambalo Wakenya wengi wanataka kuona na wanangoja kuona vile ambavyo itatekelezwa.
Still on matters ODM Deputy Party Leader Abdul Swamad Sharif Nasir has defended ongoing talks between the ODM and the UDA party, saying the discussions are intended to ensure ODM effectively presents demands that benefit its members and supporters across the country. Speaking in Mombasa, the governor said the engagement with UDA is not about abandoning the party's ideals, but about safeguarding the interests of ODM supporters through structured dialogue. Nasir urged leaders and party members who are opposed to the talks to exercise patience, noting that party positions would only be clear after leaders from both sides hold formal meetings and publicly outline their agreed areas of cooperation.
Ninyi kama wana Mombasa museme kwa gavana wetu hayuko katika chama cha upinzani, yuko katika serikali, ama namna gani? Kwa hivyo tuingie kisawasawa, sio tumeingia hapa mguu haujulikani uko nje, mguu haujulikani uko ndani. We want to negotiate something that is going to be feasible for our people. Tujue tukiwa tuna negotiate tunajua ya kwa sisi kama ODM tunapata wizara kadhaa, tunapata nini, Hata pengine yeye mwenyewe president aseme kwa mimi nimeamua nitasimama kwa chama cha ODM, you never know, si alitoka hapo pia yeye ama namna gani? Sasa watu wanaanza kuassume ya kwa tumekubaliana jambo fulani na hata hatujakaa juu ya meza, na tutarejea chini mashinani. Hata nitarejea kila ward kuuza hii sera.
Embakasi East Member of Parliament Babu Owino has called on the ODM party to convene a meeting of its members of parliament to chart the party's future leadership direction. He spoke in Nairobi and he said it is time for ODM legislators to formally engage and deliberate on the party's leadership structure, arguing that the process should be guided by inclusivity and generational transition. Owino noted that such a meeting will provide a platform for open discussions on the way forward for the party. The outspoken legislator further stated that ODM must begin preparing a new generation of leaders to take over from the late party leader Raila Odinga, saying the party's longevity depends on embracing fresh ideas and youthful leadership. All right, and that is, of course, from Babu Owino, who's the Embakasi East Member of Parliament in Nairobi County. He's been one of the leaders advocating for transition to a more youthful leadership caucus, perhaps by himself, as well as Edwin Sifuna, the Nairobi Senator, and Caleb Amisi, who's also a Member of Parliament. We'll be looking to see what response Owino gets from government, or rather from ODM party leadership, concerning this direction he seems fit to take for the party. Now, dear Member of Parliament George Kariuki has cautioned leaders and residents of Mount Kenya region against what he described as dangerous politics, internal divisions, and a lack of clear vision that could undermine the region's development. During a public engagement, Kariuki said the Mount Kenya region cannot afford to isolate itself from the current government, which he noted was strongly supported by the region under the last elections. He warned that turning away from Kenya Kwanza administration would be detrimental to the area's political influence and economic progress. The legislator defended the Kenya Kwanza government, saying the Mount Kenya region has already benefited significantly under the leadership of President William Ruto. He pointed to ongoing development projects as evidence of the administration's commitment to the region.
Hatuwezi kutoka kwa ile serikali tulistafuta, ile serikali tulisweat, ile serikali tulifikia bidii. Hatuwezi toka kwa hiyo serikali kwa sababu hapa ndipo watu wetu wanasaidika. Tukitembea pande hiyo ingine, tutaingia kwa giza, tutaingia kwa msitu na tutakuwa na shida hapa kwetu Kirinyaga. Ningetaka pia kusema wale watu wakisikia, unajua wakisikia rais ako na maono kubwa, akisema tunaenda Singapore, kuna watu wengine kwa sababu wanataka tuwe na maono kidogo kidogo, ndio tuwe popular, ndio tuwe watu wanafurahia, wanataka tuangalie mambo kidogo kidogo yenye watu watasikia. Lakini kama rais akiwa kiongozi wa taifa ako na maono kubwa, lazima tufungue macho yetu, lazima tufungue roho zetu, na lazima tufungue akili zetu, to embrace hiyo mafikira kubwa ya rais, ndio tuweze kutransform hii nchi yetu.
The government has intensified its crackdown on rogue labor recruitment agencies as part of efforts to curb fraud in the labor mobility sector. Labour CS Alfred Mutua says a multi-agency task force formed last year has so far concluded investigations into 15 cases, with files already forwarded to the investigators for further actions. Now, speaking on the matter, Mutua revealed that police have launched a manhunt for a couple accused of fraudulently obtaining 18 million shillings in government funds meant to facilitate overseas job placements. The funds were allegedly diverted for personal use instead of supporting Kenyan job seekers. The CS further noted that investigations are ongoing into more than 390 labor recruitment agencies suspected to be involved in labor mobility fraud, signaling the scale of the problem facing the sector.
Those whose names or companies have swindled Kenyans are not registered with the National Employment Agency, and some are not even registered with the Bureau of Business Registration. There are some companies that also rush to court and obtain conservatory orders so that the DCI cannot arrest them or even further investigate them. So it is important to know that there are scrupulous people out there taking advantage of our people. And that is where the government has been giving advisory after advisory on how to look for Kazi Maju jobs.
You know, we've been talking about the recruitment agencies and how they play a very critical role in terms of streamlining the labor sector. And especially if you're having recruitment agencies that are churning out, you know, hundreds of thousands of Kenyans to go work abroad, there needs to be proper policies to ensure that we're actually doing this right. Over the last few months, we've had conversations here about the Russia recruitment, which is a false and a rogue recruitment where Kenyans are told they are going to work as, waiters and waitresses and in the security sector, only to get there and be forced into military and fighting a war they have no clue about. And that is something that is very alarming, and we cannot continue that way as a country, really, because these are our own cousins, brothers, who are going to fight this war, and at the end of the day, they still do not get their money. So we hope that this labor issue will be streamlined as fast as possible to just ensure that if you're going to work outside the country, you have, you're going in the right way. You're going in the right way, for lack of a better word. All right. So we take a quick break at this point, but when we come back, the newspapers, now the quest into the death of Cyrus Jirongo proceeds, and a man at the center of it is National Assembly Speaker Moses Wetangula. I'll be telling you why when we come back after the break. Don't go too far. Welcome back. Thank you for staying with us. We'd love to get into the newspapers this morning to look at what is making headlines and why, and what you need to know and why it is important to you. I'll begin with the Daily Nation because this touches on the common mwananchi quite a lot. And this concerns the cash crisis or the cash crunch in county governments, or what we call devolved units. Now, 68 billion shillings cash crisis cripples counties. That is the top headline on the Daily Nation. 68 billion shillings cash crisis cripples counties. Governors say Treasury has not wired funds for 2 months, warning that devolved units struggling to pay salaries and suppliers are now relying on bank loans, risk shutdown, disrupting hospitals and schools. However, Cabinet Secretary for Treasury John Mbadi insists that there is no crisis. If you look at what they said, the CS said we have begun releasing the December allocation, with Nairobi already receiving its share, and by the end of this week we expect to have disbursed the entire December tranche, leaving only January standing. Makueni Governor Mutula Kilonzo Jr. on his part says contractors are becoming very wary of county projects because they incur penalties from the banks when they cannot service their loans. Nyeri Governor Mutahi Kaiga says we have a looming strike by clinical officers as well as the Kenya County Government Workers Union. The delay is going to exacerbate the situation. Kirinyaga Governor Anne Waiguru on her part says we have bursary that we should have released with schools opening and other development works that require payments to complete. So essentially, governors decry the cash crisis. The CS for National Treasury on his part says, well, it's not a crisis really. We are going to release your money eventually. Now, what is at stake is 68.47 billion shillings actually that the county governments have not received, and this is for the month of December and now month of January. So those are 2 months where the county governments have not received money, and this threatens really a lot because Remember, the whole essence of the devolved government was to bring services closer to people. So there are a lot of aspects, a lot of services that depend on county governments to enable Kenyans actually live a decent life. If you look at perhaps, county government workers, they also need to be paid. So that means majority of them may have gone for 2 months or even more without salaries. Talk about hospitals which may need medicine, and that means if there's a delay, then the hospitals do not have medicine at the moment. So you are likely to go to a hospital, get treated, and you're asked, go buy medicine outside, which is equivalent to expensive. At the same time, talk of development, you need markets, you need roads, perhaps there's a stalled road, there's a stalled school somewhere. Talk about education, the CDF, the county government's CDF actually as well is part of this money. And this means that, your county governor is likely sponsoring a number of students through this particular money. So that delay as well means a learner in school somewhere is going to be forced to go back home until they bring some money back to the school as school fees. So 68 billion wages and supplies woes cripple counties. One of the things that county governors have actually decried a lot is the fact that suppliers, especially private contractors, do not want to even work with the government right now, and especially the county government because of the delays. So imagine you have been contracted by the county government, let's say for Nairobi County, to deliver something. And you've used the money that you had, could have been profits from a different business you made, and reinvestments that you've taken back to the business, and you think, okay, working with the county government means I get perhaps double profit or even much more money coming in, and you do that service, you do it for the Nairobi County government, and the money delays. That means your business is likely to suffer. You could be servicing a loan which the interest continues to grow. And it's a whole mess essentially. So county governments have endured chronic cash crunches, delayed salaries, stalled projects, and unpaid contractors as treasury disbursement delays continue to hit services. Now the counties are owed 33.2 billion shillings for December and a further 35.2 billion for January. The last allocation, that is for November, was disbursed late last month. And so the big question is this money going to be released at once, or are we likely to just have the December allocation released? And how soon can that happen? Because the CS says, money is going to be released, but the big question is when, really? And so a number of governors have decried this cash crunch. For example, Makueni Governor, Kirinyaga Governor, Nyandarua County Governor, Homa Bay County Governor, Murang'a Governor, Nairobi Governor, Taita and Tana River, Taita Taveta and Tana River counties as well have decried the late disbursements, among other counties, which I would say perhaps all counties. So the Council of Governors has often complained that delays and unpredictable disbursements continue to disrupt service delivery across all 47 counties. This includes paralysis of critical operations such as salary payments, procurement of medical supplies, stalled development projects, and hampered drought and disaster response interventions. And I'm going to speak about that because we've got a worrying situation, especially in Lamu County, as well as I believe Tana River County as well, which are facing dire situations in terms of drought. And these are counties that are often drought stricken. And so they depend on this money as well to be able to put up countermeasures, perhaps, relieve food here and there. How do they cushion residents from these counties against a very severe drought? They depend on that money. And so the delay of that money means these people may not be able to actually get the services they require from the Tana River County government. In July, the Treasury did not release any equitable share to counties, according to an Exchequer report, yet counties depend heavily on this allocation to pay salaries, to finance development projects, and settle bills owed to contractors. In November 2024, governors threatened to shut down county operations entirely over delays by the National Treasury in releasing 63.6 billion shillings in equitable share of revenue. One of the biggest problems, I might say, that faces counties is the fact that most of them do not have sufficient on-source revenue. This means they've not been able to put up mechanisms to which they can get money without depending on the National Treasury, and that can be enough to service a county government. And so it is a question on, as we go by, because we are celebrating what, is it 13 years of devolution this year? Because they began in 2013. So 13 years of devolution this year, 2026. And we still talk about county governments wholly depending on the National Treasury for money. And yet they needed to have, looked at what ways and what means can they get their own source revenue. Now, for example, Homa Bay CEC, or rather the Homa Bay County Governor, Gladys Wanga, also confirmed that her administration had not received any allocations. However, the CEC for Homa Bay County, Solomon Obiero, says they managed to pay December salaries, but development initiative took a back seat as they relied on on-source revenue to plug the gap. So it is still not enough. I mean, the on-source revenue, just paying salaries and then now development, takes a back seat. And the whole essence, really, let me tell you, of you electing a leader into office is you want to see maendeleo. That means you want to be able to see a road being constructed, a dam being built, a school being built. And so if you're not able to see that, then what's the essence of having leaders in office, right? And so it is quite a ripple effect kind of decision when the National Treasury delays disbursing funds. But at the same time, county governments need to up their game in terms of on-source revenue. And, they've had these conversations a number of times, even during devolution conferences, on how can they up their game in terms of on-source revenue in a way that still also will not hurt the common mwananchi, because the on-source revenue, what forms does it come in? May come in the form of, taxing people at a certain market, right? So if you're going to increase that, there's a problem. When people go to register licenses for their business at a particular county government, there's some money they pay. Well, that as well goes into that and other ways. So 68 billion shillings wages and supplies will cripple county governments. And that is the headline on top of the Daily Nation. Let's also talk about the grade 10 admissions. Now, Turkana has the lowest turnout and Mandera tops in grade 10 admissions. The Turkana County government has the least number of students who have reported to grade 10, as the number of learners enrolled in senior schools rose to 831,000, according to the Ministry of Education. With the deadline for admission to schools lapsing today, those registered by midday yesterday accounted for 77% of 1.1 million junior school graduates. Only 25% of learners placed in schools in Turkana County have reported. By contrast, 95% of students have joined in Mandera. Let me tell you, there's nothing as beautiful as a country investing in human capital. And this means education is quite important. Now, you may look at this number. It is quite significant because we had 1.1 million candidates sitting for the examination, and now about 837 or 30 of them have just reported. 831,000 of them have reported. So that means we cannot, as a country, account for a little over 200,000 students and where they are, and they need to join grade 10. And so it is important that every stakeholder do a mop-up exercise to ensure that this particular figure is actually bridged, especially if today is the deadline. Now, Turkana County, least number of students, 25%. Where is the other 75% from Turkana County? And, this is quite a huge red flag, I'd say, and more efforts are needed to ensure that learners are able to join schools. Now, there could be varying reasons of why they're not doing that. Number one, we have a case of we have special needs students, and the question on how many special needs schools do we have across the country and the affordability of that. Talk about as well the affordability of a learner joining grade 10. We've seen cases on the media of students who did exceptionally well but were not able to join the schools they were called to due to financial crisis. And so well-wishers have been coming in. But the big question really is, can Kenyans be able to rally and support all 200,000 students if that's the number of students who have not been able to join grade 10 due to lack of money? Education is quite essential, and it's the fact that a Kenyan would expect that the government deals with that problem and make education affordable, make books affordable, make school fees or even school uniforms affordable. But if you're having, let's say, 1 million Kenyans following a particular story of a learner, not all of them may be able to contribute to put a learner to school. And for how long will they be able to do that? And, can they cater for the whole 6 years that they'll be in senior secondary schools? And so there's a lot of gaps as well within the education sector, to which the CS Julius Ogamba may downplay it and say, they'll ensure 100% transition, that, the schools, calling on schools to be able to let learners in. But how many schools will do that, to let a learner in free without them paying anything as the parents look for money? So there are so many questions to that. Now, Mandera County is leading nationally with about 95% of learners joining new schools. And Turkana is the lowest, like I've said. Mandera County leads with 95%. That's a brilliant transition. And we hope that they can fill that 100% today. Subsequently, the government opened a review window that attracted applications from more than 300,000 learners. This reminds me of parents who've talked about having their learners placed in day schools across a different county, which is quite hectic because, this is a 11-year-old perhaps, and how do you ensure that 11-year-old is comfortable at a day school in a different county? It's practically quite impossible. So most of them have been reapplying for a different placement, which may have as well caused the delay. So that is the headline on top of the Nation. As well as Ahmed Nasir backs down in fight with Supreme Court judges. The Supreme Court judges are reviewing a fresh application seeking to lift their ban on senior counsel Ahmed Nasir Abdullahi from appearing before them. Senior counsels Paul Mwite and Fred Ngatia told the judges yesterday to reconsider the punishment, saying Ahmed Nasir had reflected on the conduct complained of and that the 2-year ban had served its purpose. A quick backstory: he's been one of the biggest critics of the judiciary, and especially the Supreme Court and Supreme Court judges. And so the Supreme Court about 2 years ago put a ban that he will not be appearing before them. This means he may be representing a client, but because of that ban, he's not going to, represent them at the Supreme Court. And for a senior counsel, having a case at the Supreme Court and appearing before Supreme Court judges may as well go down in history as one of the biggest, accomplishments for a senior counsel. And so to have that ban perhaps has, made him think twice and decided to pull back on it. So that is the Nation headline. Now let's switch to the Standard newspaper that speaks of Wetangula questioned. That is the headline on the Standard newspaper, Wetangula questioned. Now, while police insist the car crash that killed former Lugari Member of Parliament Cyrus Jirongo was an accident, detectives have already questioned more than 20 people, including Speaker Moses Wetangula, as they dig into the final hours of a death that refuses to go away. As investigators piece together timelines and forensic evidence, politicians remain unconvinced, openly questioning the official narrative and demanding answers to what they insist are troubling inconsistencies as they investigate the death of the former Lugari Member of Parliament. Now, the big questions being asked is, how did Cyrus Jirongo find himself in Naivasha? Investigators want clarity on his movements before the crash, including where he was coming from. Another question is, was Jirongo driving himself? Detectives are seeking confirmation on whether the MP was personally behind the wheel throughout the trip, or whether another person may have driven the vehicle at any point. Who were the passengers in the ill-fated Climax bus? Authorities are establishing their identities, sitting positions, and accounts of passengers on board the Busia-bound bus, whose testimonies could help reconstruct the moment before the impact. Why did the airbags of Jirongo's Mercedes-Benz fail to deploy? Why were Jirongo's injuries allegedly inconsistent with those of a typical car crash? Now, the National Assembly Speaker Moses Wetangula is one of the 28 others who were questioned in investigations into Jirongo's death. Among the tough questions are those that I've just talked to you about. Why didn't the airbags, go off? What was he doing in Naivasha? Was he personally driving the car? What are some of the accounts of the other 28 people? This includes a petrol station attendant, includes one of the first respondents to the scene, includes his family as well, his wife, Anne Lanoi Pertet, daughter Sonia Rebman Malala, the proprietor of Wasi's restaurant, Haniri's wife, and 7 passengers who were on board the Climax bus. So the probe is being led by the Director of Homicide Investigations, Martin Nyuguto, who remained optimistic it will be conducted into its logical conclusion. Apart from revisiting the accident scene, homicide detectives have visited Busia and Kakamega to interrogate some of the passengers. Now, initially when this happened, there were a lot of questions as well on the fact that about 10 p.m. that night, he talked to someone on phone and he was in Nairobi, only for it to be established later on that he was actually in Naivasha. He had no plans of going to Naivasha. On his way to his home county, stopped at Naivasha, made about and almost returning back to Nairobi. So it was quite confusing on whether or not he was heading to Kakamega. Was he just dropping off somebody in Naivasha? Was he returning from Naivasha to Nairobi? A lot of confusion around that as well. So Moses Wetangula has recorded a statement over the death of the former cabinet minister Cyrus Jirongo, whom, he's a man he's known very well. They've served in politics for quite a long time. So on January 5th, the DCI in an update said they had launched thorough investigations to establish the circumstances surrounding the tragedy with a multidisciplinary team from the Homicide Bureau and Crime Research Bureau, as well as the forensic specialists deployed on the ground. The bus manifest and the amateur videos from the scene were obtained and subjected to forensic analysis. Now, a lot of leaders, especially leaders from Western Kenya, insist that this was not an accident and that there was a plot to allegedly kill him, and that is why the investigations are still on to now. He died in December, mid-December, and it's been a month since, and they're still working on that. Another headline is on chaos as Mukuru residents clash with police during demolitions. Tensions was high in Mukuru, Kwanjenga, and Bakasi, as irate residents protested against demolitions, triggering running battles with police. Amid the chaos, bulldozers moved in to demolish business premises and houses. The residents claimed the demolition along Catherine Dereba Road, which began around 5 a.m., caught them unawares. And there was a lot of commotion and chaos, even as the governor tried to, ease the tension, but it all fell in deaf ears. So, Manu, if you can just listen in back to that top story of the chaos at Mukuru, as demolitions continued in Mukuru, Kwanjenga, and Bakasi. Let's listen into that.
Today we have stopped this demolition. These vehicles are going out. It will not happen. Any action that will be taken here must be signed off with the people, because ultimately we can tell the people to remain. And we do our ethic, what is so hard? At Nairobi and Celeste and the people of Mombasa. These people, they have gone through so much. The stress, the strain, the distress. Yeah? But what waheshimiwe.
Umelala kama huyo mama pale chini hapa tu about 100 mita 200. Yeye usubuhi anaamka anapata tu anaona roof yake inatoka imeenda na inachukuliwa na tingatinga. Huko kwa kitanda unaangalia juu unaona mawingu. That's very unfair. That is very unfair. Hawa wananchi waje wazungumze na wao tuangalie kama ni road extension.
All right. Well, that's quite unfortunate for the residents who feel that they were shortchanged and were not consulted in advance, and that this is not the time really to be doing the demolitions now. And residents, Feni Musau, questioned, how do you destroy the livelihoods of the very people you purport to be uplifting, and you are telling them about the Nyota program? Another one said, right now young people have no jobs. Some depend on borders, and women rely on these stalls to feed their families, and the stalls were being demolished. One other says, why all these police officers? You think there is a terrorist activity here, or you would think there's a terrorist activity here. These are Kenyans, innocent people. These are innocent people, and somebody has no home to go. So we'll be back as well to Mukuru today to just see the aftermath of that and what's next for this particular residents in Mukuru, Kwanjenga. Now, one other story as well that has been making headline is on the government's sale of their 15% share at Safaricom. And the Safaricom KPC sale, why Ruto faces scrutiny over disposal of key assets. Now, initially, Safaricom or government actually held about 35% share of Safaricom. So they sold 15% of that, remained with 20%. Who did they sell it to? They sold it to Vodacom. an international organization. And so this has raised questions with somebody like Kiharu MP Ndindi Nyoro, who's also the former Budget and Appropriations Committee chairperson, questioning why this was the case. Kiharu MP Nyoro alleged that certain individuals and entities are manipulating the Safaricom transaction, claiming they have been negotiating on behalf of government without any contractual mandate from Treasury. Now, the government aimed to raise about 244 billion shillings through the sale of its 15% stake in Safaricom to South Africa's Vodacom, a subsidiary of the UK's Vodafone. Proceeds like those from the KPC privatization are expected to plug budget gaps for the current financial year and serve as seed capital for the planned 5 trillion shillings National Infrastructure Fund and Sovereign Wealth Fund. So the whole reason the government sold those assets is because there's not enough money circulating locally. So they needed to find a way to have this money. However, some people have argued, well, it's not transparent. They need to make those details public. We need to know what's at stake here. And to have an international organization controlling 55% stake of a company like Safaricom, the biggest telecommunication company in Kenya, really may as well raise eyebrows. However, the CS, John Buddy, sometime last year spoke about this as he was addressing an interview, a media interview, and said, it was necessary and there's nothing harmful about it as they seek to bridge the budget gap. Well, those are some of the stories making headlines this morning on both the Standard and the Daily Nation. And that's all for our newspaper review. All right, we wrap it up at that point this morning. Thank you very much for watching on this 21st day of January 2026, which incidentally as well marks my last day on the breakfast show, as well as on EBN TV and broadcasting news bulletins and the breakfast show. It has been an honor. Thank you very much for the support over the years. We've grown. It's been quite a journey. It's been quite a mile. And you've stood with us and you've stood with me. So asante sana for your support, for your encouragement, for your criticism as well, positive criticism. We really appreciate it. Yeah, that's pretty much it. 5 years later, we are done. Thank you very much for watching. Keep watching EBN TV. And who knows, see you on the other side. My name is Cynthia Nanjala for the last time. Thank you for watching Morning Live.